In today's video, we're going to work on with a line from last week where we did the straight line with a loop and then a loop and a straight line with a loop and a loop. So we kind of created this sort of dancing line. Now, the important thing to say about this line today is that it makes a difference if you're creating a good distance between your loops. So make sure when you create your loops, keep in mind if you're finding today's exercise difficult, where we're going to enclose this form in one, or this line in one form, that if you're creating your loops and you have quite a vertical slant to your line. As you can see here, this line here is sort of tending towards the horizontal. You want to make sure when you're creating your loops that you've almost more sort of vertical in the way that you're creating. So this line here and this line here is much more open. The V shape between the loops, as you can see here, is more closed, it's narrower. Here it's more open. That's what you want. And I'm sorry, I can see the top of the of the loops are just being cut off here. I've drawn it up high because we need to have room for the next few shapes that I'm going to draw. So when you want to enclose your dancing line in one shape, you start off by on the right side, you create a sort of rounded shape and you come round and you go down into a loop, and then you come back up into your form, creating another loop, and you come out of the form and mirror the bottom part, and you go up to create another loop in the top part of the form, come down, create a loop at the bottom, and then you come out of your form, meeting up with the line where you started. So as I hope you can see, this form is one line. So again, as usual, per usual in the other videos you may have seen, you go over your form, you create your form, and then you think, this is, not as harmonious as I would like, or my bottom form here got a bit big, or the top form got a little bit flat, I want to change that. And so you just go over your line. Always, feel that you can just go over your line. Now, as you can see here, there's a distance between my loops in the form. So there is a gap. This could arguably be bigger, like it is down here. And what you want is you want your top loops to be roughly sitting at the same height, and the bottom loops to be kind of roughly at the same height. Certainly in the case of the form here with the two loops inside. And you want the crossing points here to be roughly on an invisible sort of horizontal line. The same could be said for the crosses here. They should be on an invisible horizontal line. So this cross sitting above this cross and this cross sitting above this cross. So you just go over your lines until you think now it's roughly the way I want it. I'm just going to draw this up with a blue crayon so that we can see that this is one line, just to illustrate. There we go. So I hope that's clear, that this is one line. There we go. So you can then also do the shape with one loop, with 3 loops, 4 loops, 5 loops. You just can keep going. So I'm just going to show you quickly here and briefly what it looks like with one loop. Now I always think of this as a balloon with a little loop at the bottom. So that's how you create your shape if it's just got one loop. Now in this one with just the one loop, you need to lift your crayon and create a second line. And for this, I always think of this as a sort of raindrop. And then it has a loop at the top. So here's my raindrop with my loop at the top. So 2 lines to create the shape where you have one loop inside. And I'll just show you that with the, I'll just use the blue here for the raindrop with the loop at the top. And then we've got our balloon, red balloon rising with a loop at the bottom. So that's 2 lines. Now you can do it with 3 lines, and if you're going to do it with 3 lines, then it would look like this. You come around and then you create first a little loop, then you come inside and create a loop, and then you have a loop at the side, and you go back out the form. And again, actually there's a rule which says that if you've got an even number of loops inside the top part of the form, then it's 1 line, and if it's an uneven number, then it's 2 lines. And although this looks like, oh, you know, you only have 1 loop up in the top part, there is actually going to be a mirroring loop there and there, so it's an uneven number again because there's 3 loops at the top. So in order to show you this, here is the mirroring form. So here we have the 3 loops at the top. But of course you don't count that initially when you're doing your form. So how do you know that, you know, it's going to be 2 lines? Well, one way of knowing that it's 2 lines, whether it's 1 line or 2 lines, is how you come out of your form. So here we create a rounded bit, we go down in our first loop, come up into a second loop, go down into our third loop, and then we're coming out of the form, we're meeting up with the line that we initially created, we're rising out of the form. That means there's 2 lines. And it's the same effectively here, where you're going round the form, and then you're rising out to meet your line here. That means that there's going to be 2 lines. Whereas here, when you're going round your form, you're coming out of the form down the way, which means that then it's 1 line. So I hope that's clear. So I'll just show you with the blue line. I'll use the blue line going around the form here. So we've got the blue creating 1, it's the bottom part of the form, and then we've got, and obviously I should have maybe started with the red line, because that's how I started the form, but here's the red line. It's just simply to illustrate that there's 2 separate lines instead of 1 continuous line creating the form. So here you have the red line mirroring the bottom form. So you can also draw this with four loops inside the form. And if you're going to draw it with 4 loops inside the form, it would then look like this. I'll try and draw it so that it's not too big. So we go around the form, and then we're coming down, and then creating first one loop, then going up, creating a second loop. Remember to keep a good distance between your loops, going down into our third loop, coming up, creating our fourth loop, and then we're coming down the way. See how I'm coming down the way with the line, and I'm out of the form. That means it's going to be one continuous line going, rising back up into the form and creating my mirroring loop, and then coming down, creating a mirroring loop, going up, creating a mirroring loop, and coming down, last mirroring loop, and then I'm rising out of the form to meet the first line that or the line where I started it here. So this is what it looks like if you're creating your form with 4 loops. I'll just show you, I'll draw this up with the blue line or blue crayon. One continuous line, looping up, going down out of the form, creating the rounded bit. I'm sort of running out a bit of paper here, otherwise I might have created it, made it slightly different. And then I'm coming back into the form, creating my loops in between the first loops I made, like this. And then I'm finishing up, I'm meeting up with my form, I'm going rising out of the form, coming around. So I hope that makes sense to you. The other thing that you can do is you can play around with how the loops are going to look. So here they're more or less the same sort of size. Okay, so the bottom one here is quite large, but you could essentially, you know, you draw your rounded form, and then you come into a small loop, and then you create a larger loop, and then a larger loop here, and then you have a small loop to finish off with, and then you go round and you're coming up, then you've got a small loop here, and then a larger loop down here to mirror the one above, and a larger loop to mirror the one below, and then a small loop here to finish off to mirror. And that way you're beginning to create the sort of rhythm in your form. But you should, you know, start off by just practicing getting a harmonious form where you've got loops roughly the same sort of size, and they're sitting neatly between each other with a good sort of space in between each other. And then once you've done that, you can start working with creating you know, a difference between the sizes of loops, and playing more with the form and the shapes within the form. So have fun with that. I hope that's inspired you a little bit to go and practice, and I'll see you next week with a new form drawing exercise.